Today's lesson is about circumference and area. Your learning target says, I can accurately calculate the area and circumference of various circles. And notice I put your formulas here. So I have the circumference equals pi times the diameter. There is no operator there. You don't see an adding, a subtracting, a multiplying, or dividing. But if there's no operator, it always means you are multiplying. And for area, I want you to take pi times the radius again. And for our lesson, for this whole unit, for pi, I don't want you to use the pi sign on your calculator. I don't want you to use 22 over 7. Instead, I want you to use 3 and 1400ths all the time. That way, our answers will always match. So I had a vocabulary and notes page for you to pick up. You should have grabbed that handout from class, and I want you to fill it out during the video. And then tomorrow, remind me, and we will check against mine to make sure you have all the correct information. All right, on your note page, you'll see that the first column has to do with definitions. And one of the first definitions that is on there is diameter. And actually, I've got a picture of a diameter right here. A diameter is the distance from one side of a circle to the other, passing through the center. Whoops, let me undo what I just did. I'm not sure what just happened there. I hit something wrong. Let me finish with my center. All right, so you have both the definition of diameter and you have the picture. It is going all the way across the circle from one side to the next, passing through the center. And we happen to need the diameter for us to figure out the circumference. So again, you need the definition in that first column for circumference. It is the distance around the circle. So I'm trying to figure out how far around this circle is. So pause me while you update your definitions and your pictures. All right, still working on the same slide, more information. Here's our formula. So if you look at the second column all the way at the bottom, there's a place for you to put the circumference formula. And it says that we're going to take pi times the diameter. And remember, we're going to use 3.14 for pi. So you can now put in your definition and your picture for pi as well. Again, go ahead and pause me while you work. Okay, so after all of that background information, let's do our calculation. It says find the circumference of the circle round to the nearest tenth. So I don't know the circumference, but I know I'm going to use 3.14 for pi, so that's taken care of, times the diameter, the distance all the way across the circle. So I'm going to use 3 for that, and I just have to multiply. So 3.14 times 3 is going to give me an answer of 9 and 4200ths. Unfortunately, though, that's not going to be the right answer because I said I wanted you to round to the nearest tenth. So going back to our rounding, the 10th place is the first one after the decimal point. I'm going to make my decision based on this number after my cut line. Because that number's a 2, I'm just going to leave my answer at 9 and 4/10. My label is inches, and I am all done. Okay, this is another circumference problem. I'm trying to find the distance around the circle. I'm going to use this formula. The problem is that I didn't give you a diameter. So it's time for another definition. I actually gave you a radius. A radius is the distance from the center to the outside of a circle. So pause me while you draw your picture. Here's my picture. It is halfway across the circle, by the way. And write your definition. And when you're ready, we'll come back and calculate. Okay, I'm looking for my circumference. Right here, I'm going to start with pi. So I'm going to use 3 1400ths times the diameter. But I only gave you a radius. So we can't always use just the numbers that I'm given in the problem. Sometimes we have to think about what those numbers mean. And if it is 7 halfway across, it's going to be another 7, the other half, for a grand total of 14 inches of diameter. So it's that 14 that I'm going to use. So I'm going to take pi times 14 in this case, 43 9600ths, which would be a good answer if I hadn't asked you to round. So I'm going to put my cut line right there. And so my answer is really going to be 44 0.0 inches. So you have to think about the numbers I give you and what you need for your formula in order to do your calculation. All right, so let's get into area. We have another definition. The distance covered by a circle. So if you were to draw a picture, the area would be all of this inside of here. So I'm going to give you a second to write your definition and draw your picture before we come back and we calculate. So pause me and do that, and then come back when you're ready for calculations. All right, to find the area, I'm going to use pi I'm going to use 3 1400ths for pi. There's no signs, so that means I'm multiplying. The radius is halfway across the circle, and that was 17. Times the radius a second time, so times 17 again. So if you calculate that, you should get 907 4600ths, which would be a nice answer if I hadn't asked you to round. So what do you think the answer is going to be? I'm looking for 907 5/10. In this case, my label is squared. So we are still dealing with area, the distance covered by the circle, so what's inside the gray part. We're still using the same formula. Area equals, I'm going to use 3 1400ths for pi, times the radius. Oh, I've got a problem here. I didn't give you the radius, I gave you the diameter. So remember, you can't always use the numbers I give you. Sometimes you have to think about it. So I need to cut this diameter in half because I only want half of it. That's a radius. And so what is half of 5? 2 5/10. But I also have to multiply another radius on. So I took pi times the radius one time times the radius a second time. So when you multiply those out, you will get this answer, which would be great, except I asked you to round. So what do you think the answer is going to be? I'm looking for this answer.